What if I told you that millions of animals are killed every year all over the world, but there's something you could do to help? I'm here to tell you about the advantages of adopting a pet from a shelter versus buying a pet from a breeder or a puppy mill. The Humane Society estimates that each year more than 1 million adoptable dogs and cats are euthanized in the United States alone, simply because too many pets come into shelters and too few people consider adoption when looking for a pet. Those numbers could be drastically reduced if more people chose to adopt from a shelter rather than buying from a breeder or a pet store. I'm going to inform you about preparing to own a pet, the difference you can make by adopting, the benefits of adopting over buying, and what you could do to get started for yourself. When choosing to get a pet for yourself or your family, it is extremely important that you think long and hard about the decision and have conversations with your family before making the very long commitment of owning a pet. Lack of commitment is the main cause of shelters becoming so full to begin with, and nobody wants that. Getting a new pet on a whim without thoroughly thinking it through often leads to the animal being brought to a shelter because the individual or family just couldn't handle all the responsibility that comes with a pet ownership, because it's a lot. So, if you plan on getting a pet, make sure that you are really ready and up for the responsibility, because it's a big one. I know for myself. I've been there. When you decide to adopt a pet from a shelter, you are not only saving that animal by giving it a loving forever home, but you are also clearing a space in the shelter for another animal that needs help finding a forever home. The space in the shelters is limited, and when they get full and can't adopt out animals quickly enough, they are forced to euthanize to make space. And nobody likes when dogs get euthanized. It's just really sad. Often pets are surrendered or given up by the owners due to a move where they weren't allowed to bring the pet with them, or another life change which forces them to surrender the animal, and the animal never did anything wrong to begin with. Because of this, many of the dogs are housebroken and the cats are litter box trained already from the previous owners. This can be an advantage for those who don't want to take the time to house train an animal, but the benefits don't end there. They get even better. From my experience, these animals can be some of the sweetest animals you can find because they just want a family to love them. They have been abandoned already by the person they thought loved them and are patiently waiting on someone to get them out of the shelter. They tend to have an instant bond with their rescuer and become attached quickly, so be prepared to be loved on by the new member of your family after you adopt from a shelter. When I rescued my dog Luna from a shelter almost 4 years ago, I didn't know much about her. I was told she was approximately 8 months old, that she was a heeler mix, and that she was an owner surrender. Upon meeting her at the shelter, she was very sweet and quiet, while many of the other dogs were barking. So that was a good sign for me because I like dogs that don't bark too much. And I've since found out that she's a pit bull mix. When I got her home, I quickly realized she was going to be a big responsibility, but one I would never regret. I felt many times like bringing her back to the shelter the first year I had her because she was definitely a handful, but I knew I had made a commitment and I didn't want to give up on her. I also knew that if I had returned her, she would most likely be euthanized since she was returned once before already to that shelter, and she didn't deserve that. She had learned so much since I had had her, and I had learned so much from her as well. She is by far one of the smartest, sweetest, and most loyal dogs I've ever owned, and I know much of it is because I rescued her, and she knows that I rescued her, and that I saved her. The greatest advantage of adopting over rescuing is your part in trying to end puppy mills. Most pets from flea markets and pet stores come from puppy mills, which are factory-style breeding facilities that put profit above the welfare of the dogs, and the dogs just get treated awful. Most people aren't aware that when they go to the pet store or buy a dog online, chances are they're supporting a puppy mill. So I'm here to help spread that message because not many people know about it. Puppy mills expose dogs to horrendous conditions and provide them with little to no medical care, so they're always unhealthy. The primary job of the dogs is to produce puppies so they can be sold, and when they're no longer profitable, breeding dogs are simply discarded, either killed, abandoned, or sold at auction. When you adopt from a shelter, you can be sure that you aren't contributing to the mistreatment and misuse of innocent dogs and hopefully help to shut down some of these puppy mills. because it's one of the only ways. If you are ready for the commitment and want to adopt a dog or cat, you should look up the shelter or rescue closest to you and go take a look at the animals that they have there. Even if you aren't yet ready for the responsibility of pet ownership, there are still other ways you can help. Most shelters take monetary donations to help fund medical treatment, food, and shelter the animals that they care for. And if you can't donate money, most shelters will gladly let you volunteer around the shelter, because any help is better than none. Simply volunteering to help can sometimes be a big benefit for the shelter and help them continue to save animals in need. Although the background knowledge gained from buying from a breeder, or the ease of buying online, which we all know is super easy nowadays, might sound appealing, the reward of knowing you've saved not one, but many animals' lives is much greater and outweighs the others. Thank you.